Aviwe, good afternoon and welcome to today. Thank you very much for your time. What can you tell us this hour?
Good afternoon, Bradan, and of course we know that they were arrested for charges relating to 398.4 million rands worth of fraud and corruption. You do understand, of course, going through the state capture report itself, it mentioned Anoj, Singh, Brian Molefe, as well as Siyabonga Gama as the architects of state capture at Transnet. Now, just to get more insight on what they were charged with and all the malfeasance that we've now come to know because of the state capture report, I am joined by an organization that's really been on their tails since 2017, even giving a helping hand to the National Prosecuting Authority. Now, Advocate Stephanie Fick joins me from the organization Undoing Tax Abuse. Thank you for joining us at eNCA, but I think maybe for the benefit of our viewers, paint out exactly what these charges are around, what these three people were doing at Transnet.
I think the main problem was this whole China Development Bank loan for the 1064 locomotives that Transnet planned on getting from China, but also then requesting the funding. So it started way in the beginning, 2014, where there were dealings, but the Treasury of Transnet realized that firstly the deal was going to be too expensive for us. They're not following PFMA regulations. And then, all of a sudden regiments was part of this deal. So the deal sort of went quiet. And then we know that our former president visited China with a few delegates. And just after that, and just before Brian Molefe was removed from Transnet, they all of a sudden signed the same MOU, in other words, the same deal that's going to cost South Africa an enormous amount of money. And it all of a sudden included this, money to be paid to regiments for arranging this whole deal. A whole 189 million rand went to regiments for doing what? So this, again, it just shows you how people were put in positions. Anoj, Singh, who made misrepresentations to the board, people that were placed in positions to make sure that this types of deals go through. And I don't think we will ever know how much money that actually cost. Not only Transnet, but just the general public. Because corruption, the effect of corruption can be felt through all levels of society. And yes, this is good news. Maybe rather late than never, but it is a step in the right direction. Anoj Singh, we know, was already removed as a chartered accountant from SAICA. And yes, we are really just ecstatic that we are seeing these arrests in state capture.
You mentioned that we'd never know the exact amount. I mean, we've heard, though, in the state capture inquiry itself of even kickbacks of 6 billion rand going to the Gupta brothers, how that locomotive deal was inflated to some 54 billion rand. I don't know if you can remind us of some of these figures that we've now come to know of.
Well, just the CDB loan was, you're talking about 3.5 billion rand. There's talks about US dollars. It is really, do we know what billions mean in this country? What we can do with just the amount, and then we are only talking about Transnet, about this deal to get locomotives. And do we have the pleasure of locomotives? Prasa's got a problem. We have commuters that is still struggling, to just go from home to work because our public transport is also not what it is supposed to be. So we're literally talking about billions. And just to come back to that arrangement fee, transaction fee that regiments got, all of that money was sort of then, and it's really, it smells of money laundering that then went to various companies for also doing what? Cuban Moodley also got some of these funds. So it is enormous amounts that I don't think we really understand.
I want to go to the inquiry, and Brian Molefe as well as Anoj Singh were at the Zondo Commission itself. I remember Anoj Singh being asked by the now Chief Justice whether all these deals he did, it was his incompetence or whether he wasn't aware he was, duped himself. And he suggested that it's the latter, he was duped himself. What do you make of this?
You know what, I think let's just start with Saka deciding that he can't be a chartered accountant anymore. I think it's an excuse. We've heard so many excuses. And I think saying that he was pulled wool over his eyes, I think if you just listen to all the evidence, if you just listen, for example, let's get back to this China Development Bank. If he didn't know that, you know, he basically said yes for this arrangement fee for a company that did next to nothing. I mean, how will you do it? This is not negligence. A person of that stature, you know, a person that was, you know, employed to really look after not only Transnet best interest, but all of us, our best interest. I don't think that excuse will fly.
Thank you very much. Advocate Stephanie Fick there from the organization Undoing Tax Abuse, just maybe spelling out why Brian Molefe and Anoj Singh were arrested today, of course released on that 50,000 rand bail.
And by the way, Aviwe, as you end your report, just to remind you that there were 9 billion rand in kickbacks that were apparently promised to Gupta-linked entities. And by 2016, more than 3 billion rand had already been paid out. That's a lot of money. Thank you very much, Aviwe Mtila, with that interview with Outa, getting their reaction to the news of today, waking up in South Africa to hear that as a consequence of the investigation by the NPA's Investigative Directorate following the recommendations of the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, Mr. Brian Molefe and Mr. Anoj Singh, two gentlemen who were executives of Transnet, were arrested this morning and appeared in court. They are now out on 50,000 rand bail. There's a group of others, I think about 6 others, and together they'll be back in court in October.